G'day, Carl. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm good, thanks, Grant. Thanks for the invite to the Landscape Photography World podcast.
I'm really
Quite
pleased to
excited
have
to
you.
be here.
Yeah, really pleased to have you on the show. I know we've chatted a little bit on social media a couple of times, but I really like your work, and I'm really interested in talking to you about where you are in your photography journey and what photography means to you. So why don't we start there?
Yeah, I guess I'm still learning, picking up as much as I can from people along the way. Going back, I've always had a camera, but
Hmm.
I've never really seriously thought of myself as a photographer. And then it was probably around about 2015, I went overseas on a trip with my son to America, and we did a road trip through right the way down the west coast from Seattle. But first off, we kicked off and we went up to Alaska first for a week, and then back to Vancouver, then Seattle, and then we got the car, and then we drove all the way back down to X.
Nice.
But mainly most of the big national parks over there, the big ticket items, really. When we went, I just had the iPhone.
Right. Okay.
And whilst I was there, the scenery over there is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And I've always had a connection to some of the places there, even though I hadn't actually been. It was quite spiritual for me when I got to Yosemite
Yeah. Yeah.
because when I was younger, I used to do a lot of rock climbing.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I got there, I just knew it like the back of my hand, even though I'd never actually been set foot in the place. I knew El Capitan because I know the routes that climbing up there. Some of my friends had been over when they were younger, probably still going now actually. Some of my friends are still climbing. But Cathedral Spires, Sentinel Rock, the Royal Arches, Half Dome. It was great. It was really
Yeah.
good. And I was just thinking, why didn't I bring a camera? And so that's where it started, really.
Right.
As a
Okay.
boy. I came back, and that was the first thing I thought about. And obviously, things had moved on. DSLRs were being replaced by mirrorless, and so I had the what do I do? And from
Sure.
my background, my first camera that I used for climbing was a little Pentax Auto 110
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
with interchangeable lenses,
Yeah.
and it was tiny. It was actually at one point it was the world's smallest DSLR camera.
Yeah.
And because it could just fit in a chest pocket when you're climbing and you're on a
Yeah.
route,
It's ideal. Yeah.
you could just pull it out and just take a couple of quick pictures of your friend if he was above you or below you. So it was ideal. It was great. And I had a zoom lens and a wide angle lens and then just a standard lens. So that's where it started. But obviously, with it being a full auto and with it being the 110, there's a lot of disappointment.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So then I got a pen, a 35 mil. It was a bit bigger. It was a bit awkward, so I didn't really use it, and so it was just generally used for the family. Then I just made some notes. After that, I got a Sony Cybershot,
Okay. Yep.
which I actually charged up today, still working,
Wow.
and 5 meg. I mean, at the time, it's quite an expensive camera, even though it's only little.
Yeah.
It's so good, that camera. Photographs that I've got with it. Say the resolution is not. At the time in 2004, I got it when we first emigrated to Australia.
Okay.
We've been here 20 years. 2 days ago was our anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. But that camera was great. I got some when we've traveled, I've still taken it because of the size of it. It's a lot smaller than the iPhones, and but obviously it's not there with the resolution that everyone's used to these days. But still took some really good photos in New Zealand. I went up not up Mount Cook itself, but I went up to the Muller Hut
Yep. Yep.
in the Hooker Valley, and I went up there with it and took a. I used to balance it on rocks and put the timer on,
Yeah.
and then just sit in front of it. But it's quite a good camera. But like I say, when I came back from America with my son, I then bought a Fujifilm camera,
Yeah.
which was the crop sensor, and I ran with that for a couple of years, and then I met a couple of friends through Astro.
Hmm.
Uh, we'd go out shooting together, and then I thought I need to get a full frame because looking on the back of their screen when you're actually out in the field, they were able to their images looked on the back of the screen a little bit better than what I was getting. I then switched to Nikon and got the Z6 II,
Okay. Yep.
which I've still got to this day, and I've got three lenses for it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about getting the new. So in terms of where I am, I started off in post production using Capture One,
Okay.
which is a great editing tool.
Yeah.
It's just for my genre of, if I was just purely a landscape photographer, I think it'd be ideal. I
Yep.
don't think I need anything else because you can use other programs for stitching and then
Yeah.
capture one and then edit them from there. But I increasingly became frustrated with it because what you've got to do when you're out there, if you're out there early enough and you've got blue hour images, you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're getting the blue hour images and then you want to do a blend. Capture One didn't really lend itself into doing that because it didn't really support layers. I
Yeah.
mean, they
Right.
do have a concept of layers, but it's different than
Yeah.
Photoshop. I mean, I've not looked at it now, I would say, for the last 18 months, so I've left it firmly behind. I still own a copy,
Yeah. Sure.
but some of the functionality in that program is great. You know, when you hover on the histogram,
Yeah.
you go on your image and they've got a line that moves across the histogram. So if you go into the darks with shadows, it would show you where you were on the histogram.
Yeah. Right.
And you could target things, I think anyway, a lot better in Capture One. But
Okay.
like I say, I left it behind because it didn't have the functionality that I was after.
Yeah.
And with
Right.
all the upgrades that they were doing, I was always fingers crossed, hoping that they would bring something out that supported layers. Anyway, I moved into the subscription model with Adobe, so the big learning curve.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
in Photoshop. Yeah, I stumble around. I don't. I think I try to. I've got a little bit of a workflow, but I reckon no two edits of mine are the same. I've not
Okay.
developed a style as per se. Uh,
Uh, I don't know that I agree with that. Looking at your images, they might not all be the same, but I can definitely see it's your style of image.
yeah. All right,
So
that's good to know.
I think there's definitely a style there. Whether you feel it's fully developed or not, it's another thing. And I guess that's what I'm interested in exploring with you is where you mentioned that you're still learning. I've been doing it for some years and I'm still learning, and I don't think I'll ever stop learning. It's one of those crafts that is relatively easy to get the basics of,
Yeah,
but to master takes a lifetime. And I know you can go and get yourself a master's in photography, and I'm not talking about that
yeah,
educational side of things, but to actually master photography, I don't think I'll ever do it. Okay at some things, and there's a lot of things that I'm not very good at. And I'm interested in why you see yourself as more of still a learner than somebody that's actually started to develop their own style and got a
yeah, yeah. I should maybe leave that behind a little and progress. I've been threatening to do a website for a long time, and I need to. I need my son. It's one of his biggest gripes. Dad, you need to get your signature on them, and you need to get them on a website.
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I'll probably will put in some effort into doing that. Obviously, you get bombarded with this video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Oh yeah, yeah. I use them. I'm not sponsored by them. I use them. They're
Yeah,
okay. There's Wix. There's a whole bunch of others. My
yeah,
my domain provider actually provides a freebie that comes with the domain, but the functionality that it has in terms of the commerce side of things, it's left in the dust by things like Squarespace and Wix and Shopify. Yeah,
yeah.
there's a whole raft of them. And if you do want to sell your images and sell services and that sort of thing, then you've really got to go into one of those big three or four that are out there. Where
I have sold some of my work, and that kind of like hit me. It was a bit of a jolt. I was like, "Whoa, what do I do now?"
you're a professional photographer.
And so I thought, oh, I need to do something. I really do need to do something. But there's a guy who I watch when I first started my photography in 2018, and I
Yep,
started to think more seriously about it. Chris Sale, I don't know if you've heard of him from the
I have
UK.
heard of him. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's really good, and behind the scenes, he's got his own learning community that you can go. And I was thinking that if ever I went back to the UK, I would probably think if I wanted to do an actual course, I would probably ask Chris, can I come along and maybe do a one-on-one, or if he's doing a 1 to 2, something like that. And obviously, as you get bigger profile on YouTube, the less important that becomes because I appreciate like the economies of scale, but he was talking about WordPress. I did actually do a little bit of a start on it. But it's not on the internet, it's on a computer, solely within the confines of my
but
own home.
I think the important message is to start. And
Yeah,
even
yeah,
if you haven't actually got it to a point where you're happy with it and you're not ready to release it to the public, that
yeah,
start and that going through the process, getting it out into the public then is, I guess, that next stage of it's a bit like your photography. You start out and you do a little bit and then you go, okay, well, that's not as good as what other people are doing. I need to do this and start changing what I do a little bit to, and it's not necessarily, I'm not talking about stylistic stuff here. I'm talking about quality of work and that sort of thing. And you
yeah.
do get to a point where you go, okay, I'm ready to actually push this stuff out into the public now, and I'm confident that it's good enough.
So it's definitely something that I need to explore and actually get on with and just develop that side of things.
Yeah.
But I suppose when I look at when I started, there's so much like monitors. Say, for instance, when you see people, you think, "Oh, I need to get a monitor. It needs to be color calibrated," and so then you've got to buy a spider, and it just escalates. I'm retired now. I've got to be careful. Self-financed at the moment, but I've not got an endless pit of money, but
No.
you know. You could very easily spend 10 grand just like that.
Oh, very
And
much so.
from
Yeah.
one of the takeaways I get from where people that have watched the YouTubes is spend the money on experiences. If I was working full time still, then yeah, I would probably get a big screen and calibrate it. But having said that, Gary Goff, have you heard of him?
I've heard of Gary, yeah.
Gary, yeah, he said he's never calibrated a screen in his life.
I'm the same. I bought a pre-calibrated screen. It was factory calibrated. It is a Pro Art, so it spent a few quid on it. I haven't touched it since I bought it 5, 6 years ago, and since I bought it, it's
Yeah.
the colours look okay to me. The thing is you never know what people, if you particularly when you're putting it on the internet, you never know what other people's screens are set up like, and they're definitely not all calibrated. And then
Yeah.
you've got screens, phones, iPads, etc. It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, well, my son, he's got all the Apple Mac stuff, so he said, Dad, I can get you a log on, blah, blah, blah. But the problem I've got really is I wouldn't need to calibrate a screen because I'm colorblind anyway. Like 1 in 3 bloke. Yeah, it was quite funny because my cousin came across last year and stayed with us for a few weeks, and he's also colorblind, and obviously his mother is like my mum's sister, and so we both got the color blindness.
Mm.
So sometimes I, my friend who was shoot with David, we go, "That's a great image, that Carl, but it's a bit purple." It's
And
to
you
me,
can't tell.
yeah, I can't tell. So, yeah, calibration's not. I wouldn't bother with it. But yeah, and then the bag from like my climbing background, I would much prefer to have an actual hiking bag and then put a cube in,
Yeah, right.
get a bona fide camera bag. That's
Yep.
just the way I am at the moment. I'm thinking maybe I need to switch.
Yeah, okay.
And so I do look quite a lot at some of the bags that guys carry, and then I look because I would like to go back to New Zealand at some point, and then I don't know, maybe hit Larry up and Grant Burley over there as well. Got
Yeah.
in touch with those guys because I think this Astro community is great.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
so supportive for the genre of photography.
Yeah.
Uh, but I like being in the mountains. It's
Yeah.
just
I
the
can
knees,
understand that.
the knees have got to get me there now. That's
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah, that's where I struggle now is I won't be climbing Everest or anything much bigger than a hill in my current condition. Mine, I've got a knee which is the posterior cruciate ligament.
All right, yeah.
So it went a few years ago, and I was basically on crutches for a little while. And I've managed to, with physio and some very good drugs, managed to get it back to a stage where I can walk around and it's
Yeah,
fine on the flat. But actually, uphill isn't too bad.
yeah. I
Um,
found that.
yeah, downhill is
Yeah.
actually uh, far worse. Yeah, it's
You need
uh,
trekking poles, you know.
yeah, absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
I need to. We're gonna go to Norway in September, October with my daughter. She'll fly from Dubai to Oslo and meet. We'll all gather in Dubai actually for
Yeah,
one night, and then we'll all take off to Oslo. And so I've got all the locations and GPS ready for that.
Yeah, nice.
But with it being a full family holiday, I don't know how I'm going to be able to achieve everything. But yeah, so I've got to get some walking poles, and my wife too as well, because I've had both of my knees replaced.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah, so 10 years apart. First one was a doddle, back at work after 6 weeks.
nice. Yeah.
2 weeks sick leave, and then 4 weeks working from home, and back in work after 6 weeks. Then my left one, I had that done in 22, nearly 2 years ago. Because of COVID, it got
Yeah,
delayed. Even though it was private, they were using the private hospitals for the patients. That was a long, it still is. I'm not fully recovered. And
yeah.
I think I might have to curtail some of my ambition. I want to go up the Rheinbriggen,
Okay.
to get the shot of Hamnoy, I think it is, the little village down there. And I've got it in my mind, the shot, but it's whether or not I can get up those 900 and odd
Hire
steps.
yourself a Norwegian Sherpa to carry you up.
Well, they got the Sherpas over to build the steps.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So building on experiences, I guess. I think that's where I'm going to spend my dollars when I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And
uh,
that's very understandable.
yeah.
I'm interested in how you set creative challenges for yourself. Do you set creative challenges? Or is it just, I just want to go and take this shot and that's where I want to go?
No, I do a bit of pre-visualization before I head out. Now that I've got more experience and I know what I want to get from the night. Like my friend who goes shooting with me, David, sometimes we need to spend a bit more time when we're out telling each other what we're actually doing,
Yeah,
the idea behind an image that you've got,
yep,
and what you want to do. And because sometimes I come away and on the night he looks at what I've got, and he's not quite sure why I've done that. But
okay,
I know when I get back what I'm going to do with it.
yeah,
I'll have looked at something, and because of the distortion with wide angle lenses,
yep,
I'll shoot two columns.
yeah,
Yeah, rather than just one frame,
yeah,
I'll do two columns or maybe sometimes three, and then
right,
go from there. And quite often I'll do it in landscape orientation rather than portrait,
yeah, okay,
just to get on top of that distortion. Doesn't always work. That's what I have in mind. And then recently, like I say, I made the switch to Photoshop,
yep,
and like I say, stumbling my way through that. But I have found some little nuggets for things, and I guess one of them is to do with blending. The area where the horizon meets the sky.
hmm,
Quite often, sometimes when you look at other people's images, you can see sometimes that, oh, the blend is not quite right. So what I tend to do is take two images,
yeah, right,
same tripod position before I move I have a geared head,
yeah,
and I take two shots in the same position, one for the foreground and then one that's tracked, and then move the camera up to take the sky, and then go from
sure,
there. And then those two images, that's my first frame. I'll take them into Photoshop and then blend them, which is great because the way that I do the blend is I'll just align the two images like you would if you were, say, like focus stacking. Say if you're doing like a river shot or something
yep,
and you wanted everything front to back focus, I would just take them in, align them, and then I'd use a sky selection tool, create a mask, and then invert it. Boom, done.
yeah,
It's really easy.
yeah,
I find that part. Some of the other parts aren't. Yeah,
yeah.
now that, but I think as you build more experience in editing, it enables you to make different decisions when you're out there.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
You know.
And I guess I'm interested in you mentioned that you've got an idea about what it is that you're going to do with the image. Is it what are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing shooting and collecting enough data to then use in a certain way? Or is the way that you want to edit dictating what it is that you're shooting?
I guess it's like a combination of both, really. My wife was a midwife, so she had to do a lot of reflective practice,
Yep.
and I took that on board myself. And I've used that in my photography. So when I come back from a shoot, I quite often sit down and reflect on what I did on the night.
Yeah, right.
So it helps me the next time that I go out. And obviously, because it can get quite late when you're out there in the dark, you do become fatigued.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you've gone out with an idea to do something, but you've come back and you've not executed it. But that's just fatigue. Yeah, I had that last month when I went up to the Pinnacles.
Yep.
That's a 2 hour drive both ways. So
Yeah.
you've got to set aside 4 hours just for driving alone.
Unless you stay up there at Lancelin or
Yeah, you could do. Yeah, but it's not that far. It's
yeah.
achievable as a drive.
I got to say, I did that the last time I was in WA. Actually, went and shot the pinnacles at night, and also first thing in the morning. We actually stayed there in the caravan park at Lancelin, and we stayed in a cabin. Didn't have a caravan to tow around at the time. I've now got a motorhome, but yeah, just found it really handy because it's 5 minutes up the road, and you're there, and you can then spend all night if you want, or get there at whatever crazy hour of the morning. The
Yeah.
morning I got there, it was actually covered in fog, so it was really
Oh,
interesting to
yeah,
see.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's quite a difficult place to shoot, really.
it is. It can be really
The,
hard.
the colour of that sand, in combination with the pinnacles themselves.
Yeah.
We've gone up there for Blue Hour to take all our Blue Hour images, and then with art, the blending was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare because the colours, you just couldn't match them.
No,
You
no.
know, it was really
And as
difficult.
the light changes on them as well, they colours both on the pinnacles themselves and the
Yeah,
sand changes quite a bit. It's
yeah.
amazing.
So when I travel, most of it is around the new moon. So I'm going up north. When I say up north, I've not done a great deal up north really. I've been up to Broome and the Kimberley. Fortunate that I've got a really good friend who lives up there, Jim, and he lets us stay with him. And he actually drove us halfway to Derby.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I have to get used to saying that because we would say Derby. So anyway, he drove us to Derby, and we went scouting the day before for boab trees,
All right. Yep.
and I got this image of the boab tree with a Milky Way behind it,
Yeah, no.
and I really pushed the boat and pushed the friendship.
Yeah.
Stayed in the car, and I was out in the bush, and there were dingoes knocking about.
All right. Yep.
There's about 20 of them.
Wow.
And it never fazed me. I never thought about an attack from dingoes.
Yeah.
And it was only when I got back to Perth, that my friend sent me a news story of a bloke that had been attacked up there, not
Wow.
in Broome,
Yeah.
but it was near Carragini National Park,
All right. Yep. Yep.
which you will have heard of. But there's been a number of attacks there by dingoes.
Yeah. Wow. I've
I think,
heard about the ones up on Fraser quite a bit, but don't hear too much about the ones over in WA.
yeah, a lot of it's been to do with children. They would probably
Yeah.
go as prey, small children. But this one in particular was a guy who spent all his life out in the bush, for gold,
Yeah. Right.
expecting, and he's got a gun with him. He's got a dog, and he went down to the water to just get some water for his billy can and make his soup or whatever he was having for dinner. And when he got back to the camp, there was one lone dingo.
Yeah.
It looked really malnourished, and so he gave it a couple of morsels to eat. And the next night, came
Yeah.
back with a pack
Yeah.
and attacked him.
Wow.
He had to drop four of them, so he killed four. But I didn't know any of this. And I was under the boab tree. I could hear them. Yeah, of course, like the big bulls that they have up there as well. You know,
Yeah. They.
yeah. Whoa, they're huge. But I was so pleased that I managed to get those images.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think my friend. I needed to buy a few beers for the
Yeah.
rest of the holiday, but a big thanks really to him and his partner Helen. I wouldn't have got that image without them,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was right on the top of my list because it's such an icon of Western Australia.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have them over east?
You get them up in Queensland a bit. Not too many. There might be a few in northern New South Wales, maybe up towards Lightning Ridge or something like that, right up near the Queensland border. But mostly you'll see them over here. It'll be up in North Queensland somewhere, northwest Queensland, rather than you don't see them obviously up the coast much at all. They're mostly an arid sort of landscape tree. There's plenty
Yeah,
of arid landscape there. Yeah.
yeah. The landscape up there was great in the Kimberley, like the savannas.
Yeah.
Oh,
And you get really good sunsets and
yeah,
sunrises, I think sometimes. It just has certain times of the year, you just get that nice light that you don't really see anywhere else.
yeah. So I guess this last year or so has been a little bit limited, saying because of my knee,
Yeah.
where I could get to because in the past I've gone up Mount in the Perth Hills, Mount Cook. I've stayed up
Yep.
there all night, hiked up there with all my gear, and then run out of battery, and then I just lay there under the stars on my mat. I just
Nice.
looked up, waited for the dawn to come, and then walked back down. But yeah, I've not been able to do much of that of late. The knee's just not,
Yeah.
this. I think I suppose it's another 10 years healing. Yeah, it's been a long back road to recovery with this one, really.
Yeah. You mentioned that you run out of battery and you're just lying there looking at the stars. What is it about that attracts you, and what is it about Astro that makes you want to go out and spend all night with a bunch of dingoes?
Yeah, I guess really one of my earliest memories really was when we were in the Lake District in Borrowdale.
Yeah, yeah,
We were 17, and me and my best mate Nick, we were camping in a Van Gogh Force 10 tent, and they were the big, heavy canvas ones. You
yeah,
can't go backpacking with them, but there's no way the wind is knocking those over.
yeah.
Hence the name. They were brilliant, and we'd been to the pub, underage drinking, obviously at 17,
As you do. Yeah.
as you do,
It used to be earlier in our day, I think.
and we were lying out in the tent, but with our heads we had the entrance open, and we're just looking up at the stars. And
Yeah,
I've always liked looking up. I think it's especially when it's really dark, and we're so blessed really to have the skies that we do in Western Australia.
yeah, definitely.
And we've really only got to drive maybe sometimes say 90 minutes, and you can get somewhere that quite dark,
Yeah,
Bottle 3 maybe, but we've got Bottle 2s here. I don't think I've shot in a Bottle 1. I'm not sure. I think the place up in Broome where I did the boab tree could have been.
yeah.
Uh, I'd have to look
But
on.
quite possibly up around the Kimberley and that northwestern interior away from Broome and Derby. I
Yeah.
think it'd be ideal Portal One.
My friend, he came over. My best friend, he came over in March this year, and we went down to Margaret River. We rented a house when we were down there, and I took him out because he's seen so many images that I've got, and he's a radiographer.
Okay, yeah,
That's what he does now. So he works with images all day long and of a different sort. And he came out with me, and he absolutely loved it. And he said that to me. Do you remember when we were in Borrowdale when we were 17? And these are things that bind you together,
yeah,
and I think
definitely.
it's that connection with the landscape, with me anyway, that because I love the natural world, and because of my affinity with, like, when I was younger, climbing the rock, I just look at the different colours that you can get, especially like sometimes when it rains, the
Mm.
way that, like, the water, we've had a lot of rain over here this last week or so, and I believe the waterfalls are pumping. I've not been to any yet, but the rock looks great. It just
Absolutely.
changes. The colour change is just immense.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like the geology, like the connection, like I say, the connection to the land, and the history as well. I found that in Western Australia, they wouldn't have got to Kalgoorlie if it wasn't for the indigenous people,
yeah, that's right.
because they knew where all the water was along the way.
That's right. Yeah,
So they opened the pathway for them to get to Kalgoorlie for where the gold was. And a lot of it is near
yeah,
granite rocks. So
yep,
the rain just runs off and it collects at the bottom. So they always know there's going to be water there.
yeah,
And with granite, I've got like a real strong connection to that because Derbyshire, you've got the Dark Peak
yep,
and the White Peak. So white is obviously limestone, but the Dark Peak is all gritstone and granite. So
yeah,
yeah, I was amazed when we went up to the Kimberley and we flew in to horizontal falls, looking at the landscape from above. So I know recently you've had a couple of photographers on, Martine from Margaret River,
yep, yep.
from the air. I took a few shots with my camera. I wasn't best placed on the plane, but everyone had a camera.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so it was hard competing for a bit of window space. But yeah, I hadn't gone up there with that in mind, but I just took the camera along.
Yeah, yeah,
But the rocks up there are just unbelievable. The way that the earth has moved and the plates. And then I've actually had some grief as well on some
yeah,
comment once because you read about the area where you're going, and like Margaret River,
yep,
that part, it changes,
yeah,
from limestone to granite at a certain point. And I'd written that this part of Western Australia was once joined to India.
Oh, okay.
And someone said, no one ever goes on about New Zealand, on the east coast of Australia. And I'm thinking, oh, I didn't bargain for that. What do we do here? Like I say, that was when because in a few places they've got a few little plaques that say this was part of Gondwana.
Well, yeah, it was
Yeah,
all we're an island off the coast of Antarctica, if you like.
yeah, yeah. But when I went down to see Mags with my friend in March, we went for a really long walk along the coast to coast path
Yep.
to Conso's campground, and my wife picked us up from there when we'd finished our hike. But some of the boulders that are down by the water,
Mhm.
unbelievable colours.
Yeah,
Unbelievable for someone that's colourblind. I can see the colour. I know the colours are there. I just can't say that is,
yeah,
green, say for instance. So my mate, he was chuckling away at that. Yeah, it's. I like to say I like that kind of connection with the natural landscape. And I'd love to get over to Queensland at some point.
yeah.
You know, the Glasshouse Mountains,
Yeah, there's some
spectacular.
gorgeous landscapes up there. The wife and I spent about a month. Didn't go up any further. I have been to Cairns and Townsville before, but didn't go up any further than Bowen this time. But Bowen, you don't see a lot of shots around Bowen, and just the granite boulders there, just around the point. I forget the name of the point, but someone will probably be shouting at their podcast headphones telling me what it is, but just amazing looking granite, beautiful oranges and browns and reds, and just tumbling down into the sea. And just the shapes are just incredible. And yeah, I could have spent a whole month just at that one spot. We didn't. I could very easily have spent a month just exploring a tiny segment of that bit of the coast.
Yeah, I need to do the coastline here. It's all limestone,
Yeah,
and there's some. I only live 500 meters from the beach,
yeah,
so I can hear it
yeah,
and I can smell it. I just can't see it,
yeah.
but I've not got far to walk.
Nice.
It is so sharp. You could really do yourself a serious injury down there.
Yeah, definitely.
The
Yeah,
beach is great with the winter, but it takes all the sand away.
yeah, right.
Then it becomes quite tricky to get along the beach. And I've seen even younger people have to turn back, because you can't get to where you want to go to because it's just too tricky and it's so sharp, razor sharp. But it's really interesting the shapes that are down there because it is
Yeah.
limestone. We get a lot of there must have been blowholes in the past.
Okay. Yep.
So it looks like someone's just had a drill and just drilled straight through the rock,
Yeah. Yeah.
about say 20 mil in diameter and no 20 centimeters rather in quite a large hole, but they're smooth as.
Yeah.
And the color when a wave hits, if it's say the tide's coming in and it would be dry, but
Yep.
then as a wave comes in and splashes over it, the color change is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I do find it quite a bit of a challenge going down there because it's a dog beach, which
Yeah.
is
Right.
he loves it down there.
Yeah.
You get a tripod and dogs.
Yeah. They're not fun.
Doesn't mix too well.
No.
Most of the dogs down there are friendly when they come up and they're inquisitive. They want to see what you're doing.
Yeah. They want to have a sniff around and see
Yeah,
if you're friendly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I should try and get down more often.
I haven't had one knocked over by a dog yet, but I've been in a couple of times where they come up and you go, I'm going to hang on to the tripod and make sure it doesn't get knocked over here.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if you got filters on.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, because that's at least a grand's worth of glass there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does success look like for you? Where are you going to say to yourself, yeah, I am a photographer, I'm a pretty damn good one, and I feel successful.
That's a tricky one for me. I suppose I think coming away happy really with a day's shoot. For
Yeah,
me, that is success. I was a little bit frustrated when I got back from the pinnacle because sometimes you just get too carried away. You get excited,
yep,
and it was a first quarter moon when I went,
yeah,
and I still decided I'm going to go because it was clear, and I knew what was coming weather-wise, and I'm glad that I did because we've had nothing since
yeah,
Astro really, and so I think the moon went down about 12:30 that night, so I knew it was going to be quite a long one. But with the moon shots, when the moon was still up in the sky, I made the mistake of getting too close to some of the pinnacles, and at the hyperfocal distance,
yeah, yep,
I should have just stepped back, maybe just another half meter.
yeah,
So some of the Yeah. On small screens, iPhones, it's going to look okay. But
Yeah,
I know myself on the big screen, I missed it. I missed
yeah.
focus.
Yeah, I think everyone has their failures, and you go out expecting to do one thing, and it could be set up 2 feet to the left or right of where I should have,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you didn't quite nail the composition, or you didn't quite nail the things like high distance. I find that a lot with waterfall stuff, and it's
yeah, yeah,
something that I've learnt now to look out for, and just trying to make sure that you've got enough distance away from the nearest object so that you can actually focus on it. And sometimes that involves even stepping forward so that that object is now out of the frame, and you're then focusing on the next bit in front of it or
yeah.
behind it.
I had a little thought about that actually, because when I was saying before about like reflective practice,
Yeah.
when I came back, I thought, oh, what could I do so make sure that doesn't happen again? So I went back to my climbing days again, and I thought, oh,
Yep.
I know, I'll nip into Perth, go to a climbing shop, and I'll buy a small piece of purlon, not the climbing rope, but the what they use for the protection. It's
Yeah.
usually a
Yeah.
smaller diameter, and then I thought I'll get a few lengths of it, and then I'll cut it at not exactly at the hyperfocal distance,
Yeah.
but you
Right.
might be shooting wide open,
Yeah.
when you do astro, so say 2 point, if it's a 1.8 lens, you might be shooting at 2.2, 2.8,
Yep.
but you know the distance with thanks to photopills, and then add on say another half a meter, so you know that you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
cut that piece of rope accordingly, and then just lay that against your subject, and then come. And I thought that's a simple thing, and it wouldn't weigh much in your bag.
No, this is it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that way, next time you surely would nail your focus.
Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, success, I suppose, would be getting this website up and running. So I'd have to put some work into that. And I'm not really chasing sales or anything like that. But what I'm trying to say really is a bit more exposure, I think, that the website would give. Because at the moment, I'm on Flickr and I'm on Instagram. I don't really do much on Facebook.
Yeah.
I know other people do, but yeah, I don't really do much on Facebook.
Yeah. I'm on most of the social media largely because of the podcast and getting the word out about that more than
Yeah,
the photography. Yeah, I post photos there all the time now because I'm there. But the reason
yeah,
why I went and joined a lot of these places is largely because of the podcast more than anything else.
yeah, yeah. But it's doing well. Yeah, I
Yeah.
really enjoy it. I always put it on in the car.
Yeah.
If I've got a fair bit of distance to travel,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll always have it on.
Oh, let's
Yeah,
down to the interesting people I hope I can find and get to have a bit of a chat with.
yeah, yeah. And it's good to see people's different views as well on things.
Absolutely, yeah.
Martine's story was really interesting, the shooting from the air, and then the
Mm.
language thing, like I thought that was really interesting. And again, that connection to the landscape. I've written my blurb to some of the images on Instagram, a little bit of background, so people, and I'm quite fascinated by the indigenous culture in relation to, like I say, the landscape, yeah, and the names as well. I love some of the names.
Yeah, they're
I
awesome.
love places. I think, oh, why was it named like? Why? How did it get that name? So then
Yeah,
I'll do a little bit of research into that. So it's like history, geology, and obviously their culture, with especially like relating that to Astro, the tales that they tell, their storylines and
yeah,
song lines as well. I think it's great that their history isn't written down.
yeah,
It's come down through the generations by storytelling.
yeah.
And I suppose our culture is as we get older, obviously everyone reads to the children and tells stories, but we don't tell each other stories as adults much, do we?
No, it doesn't happen quite as much. And I definitely think it should. Yeah, okay, you read your books and whatever, but it's not the same, as you say, as that verbal storytelling and that
Yeah,
sharing of information and lore and so forth is something that I think as a culture we Westerners miss out on.
yeah, yeah. I like the storyline that they tell about the mid clouds.
Yeah,
We're so lucky to see in the southern hemisphere. You don't obviously our counterparts in the northern hemisphere. They don't get to see those, but the way that they talk about those is like the campfire. The smaller one is another big, but it's not a star, a cluster Tucana 47. It's
Yeah,
called,
yeah.
and they talk about that as being that's the woman's camp,
Yep.
and they've got the campfire, and they've banished the men
Yeah.
to the big one. And
Yeah.
I found that fascinating when I learned that. Yeah, which is over here. There's an organisation called Astrotourism Dublin,
Okay, yeah.
and I think they were involved with the eclipse that we had in, I think it was April last year. I think it was
Yeah.
last, and they got a lot of people flying in for that. But they on their website, I think you can read about some of these things, the indigenous stories behind, like the rising emu, for instance.
Yeah, definitely.
I
Yeah.
love that. I think because when you see it,
What gets me about that is the position of it indicates the various seasons, obviously, and they repeat every year. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
now's the time for this particular bush to be in season, and you can go and get whatever the fruit is, or the roots, or whatever it is from that particular bush or this particular tree. And they know basically by the position of the emu as
yeah,
to when to go and get particular types of food.
yeah, yeah. It's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
yeah.
You have a favourite spot that just keeps calling you back?
There's so much of Western Australia I've not seen, so that's quite a difficult one, really. Calling me back, I guess not. I don't really have any. When I went to the Pinnacles last month, it was the first time I've been in 2 years. Last time I went, I got COVID. That was eventful, and that I just. But it was really cold, and we camped out. There's a campsite up there, and we
Yeah.
camped out. It was very cold, and but it was just amazing, really. You know, I was saying before about the light and how at Blue Hour trying to
Yep.
control that. We
Mm.
were in t-shirts, and then the minute the sun went down, we didn't even have the heaters on the lenses, and the temperature just plummeted. And before we knew it, we had to stop and then wait for the lenses to defog. And then the next minute, we're in base layers, fleece jacket, hoodies, and then padded jackets. And then I think I even at that night, I think I even had like a wind shell on as well over the top of my duvet jacket.
Yeah, right.
And by the time we got to bed, it was gone. It was gone 3:30, and we were camping. I think our neighbours weren't best pleased, but there you go. We were soon off in the morning anyway. We were gone by 8:30. We only had 5 hours, Kip. But I got back and I just thought, because it was so cold, I thought I've just picked up a cold. But it was in those days where we had to test ourselves. So
Yeah,
I
right.
tested myself, and sure enough, it came up, and I had COVID. So that actually pushed my knee operation back by 6 weeks because the anaesthetists in Australia, the Royal College,
Yep.
dictated that because of your lungs could be affected
Yeah.
another 6 weeks before operation. I was due to have it in July, but I like the wheat belt. I
Okay,
just
yeah.
love the feel. It's so vast,
Yeah.
and you get over the escarpment in Perth, and you go through the forests, and then it clears.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
just plains. Yeah.
yeah, 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 and the light out there at times at sunset is incredible.
Yeah,
So I suppose, yeah, if I had to answer that, I'd say the wheat belt, anywhere in the wheat belt.
fair enough.
Yeah, the gum. I just love the gum trees when they've got the afternoon sun, golden hour. I think they're just splendid. I just like the salmon pinks because I need to study the trees more.
Yeah,
So to
right.
me, they're all. I'm not saying they're all gum trees, but I know my jarras and my marry trees. But some of the like the salmon gums, I wouldn't.
Yep.
But you can go off the colour and say, oh, hazard a guess that that might be a salmon gum.
Yeah,
But
right.
I just think they're so spectacular in the sun. It's like the boab trees, really.
Yeah.
The the trunks of the boabs are just brilliant. Absolutely. The way they're almost like metallic, and the way that sheen and the light and
Yeah. And the
the
little
graduation of colour.
indentation
Yeah,
on it as well. Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I'd say the wheat belt.
Fair enough. What's photography taught you about nature?
I think a deeper connection with it, really. You're taking that time. When you say like hiking, you're moving through the landscape. Whereas with photography, there's going to be an element of that anyway. You would be moving if you
Sure.
go into places that are off the beaten track. But it's just taking the time just to stop and appreciate it. And I need to, when I'm actually out there, to take that into consideration, to actually stop and look, especially like at the sky
Yeah.
and the colours that are there, so you can get a mental picture for when you get back, and then you want to edit the photograph that you took. So you
Yep.
just get that mental image. So developed a little. It's SLR.
Okay.
Stop, look, and remember.
No,
Like in my notes, I did that when I got back,
yeah,
and I thought, yeah, I'll do that. Definitely more of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a situation where you're just not feeling it and you've hit a creative wall and gone, no, it's just not working for me today?
Yeah, I guess I've come across that. Like I say, we're only 500 meters from the beach, and I should make more of it, but I don't. And I should force myself out of the door to get down there more often.
Yeah, yeah,
Because we can walk for a good few kilometers along that beach.
yeah.
Some days you're on it and you're totally on your own with the dog, no one else. I have gone down with just my camera, no tripod, and just handheld, and I need to do more of that. I think
Mm.
my tripod's not that heavy anyway. I could go down there. It's a Benroll.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's not that stable when it's windy. And I guess that's the thing we were saying before about gear. When you're starting out, you don't always know what to buy.
Yep.
My friends have got the tripods that have got the bowl.
Oh, yep.
If I was starting again, I would say get one of those
Yeah,
for stability. Definitely
yeah.
get one of those. And then your options are so much more, I think. Bought a few things that are needing, or bought the wrong thing, thinking that I bought the right thing. But then when I've got it, oh, like the panel leveling head, so you don't have to
Oh,
mess
yeah.
about with the legs. Bought one of those. But then when I put my geared head on top of it, I can't see the bubble. I shot myself in the foot with that one. But yeah, I know you can buy all the little bits and bobs that you can put on the top of that that's got a bubble level sticking out.
You can also, I know it doesn't level the tripod itself, but you can actually also use the level in the viewfinder and the camera. You switch that on.
Oh
I
yeah,
know.
I do that. Yeah, I do. But if you're not level,
No,
that's yeah, it's going to
I
quickly
know.
go off. And when
Yeah,
you're doing, say, like a panorama, and had to use a bit of creative license with the horizon sometimes,
yeah,
the transform tool, because I wasn't level.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
try to make sure that I am, because it's
Yeah, it
so much
makes a
easier.
big difference in
Yeah,
blending, particularly
yeah.
if you're stitching panoramas together. Yeah.
And then, like I say, you always. I find. Have you had John Rutter on? John
No,
Rutter?
not yet. No.
Yeah, he's a good bloke. Very knowledgeable as well. And like I say, I do have things in notes that I might send an email to myself just so that when I get there where I'm going, I've got it and I can read it. And so, like this time of year now, the Milky Way is moving into the western sky,
Yeah, right.
so it's descending. So shoot up.
Yeah,
When it's rising, shoot down. So you've got
yeah,
to go to the top of the sky and shoot down.
yeah,
Because if
yeah,
you don't, you end up getting star duplication.
yeah.
Which when you're stitching, you think, oh no, what's wrong with this? What have I done? And I found that when you're out and you're taking a panel, you start on the left and you shoot to the right, then I would move the ball head up a little bit or tilt head if I was using a tilt head.
Yeah.
And then on the right hand side, I would then sweep back to the left. I found by the time you get back to the left, it was 20 minutes since the last time you were
Yeah.
on that
Oh, things
side.
rotated. Yeah,
And yeah, it moves at 15 degrees an hour. So
that's it.
that's why
Yeah,
you get the star duplication.
yeah,
And so I did a panel when I was up at the Pinnacles. And when I got back, I did 4 rows. I thought this is going to stitch beautifully. And I ended up with 2 lots of Magellanic cloud.
proud
But I
of
had
you.
enough overlap to take one of the rows out
Yeah,
and it cured it. So I only needed to use 3 of the rows.
yeah, cool.
But that was because I didn't return to the left.
Yeah.
I won't make that mistake again,
No.
he said.
What do you see as photography's place in society?
I think it's great. I really do. I think when I was listening to the podcast that you did with Martine and you were talking about the black images, everyone was just putting up an image of just blackness.
Yep.
I thought that was great. I have got some concerns over your own individual IP as well, because I think you had to sign the terms and conditions for Adobe. I
Yep.
think they're doing a bit of machine learning off your images
Oh, they're absolutely doing that, which is
for
one of the
AI.
reasons
Yeah.
why I don't store anything in the Adobe cloud.
Yeah, and none of mine is in it.
Yeah.
I, I do store my images on the cloud. I need to have a look at your offering, actually, the one that you start with podcast with.
Yeah.
I need to have a look at that because I use OneDrive
Okay. Yep.
because we got the subscription for Office, so I think we've got 5 terabytes. I've not got enough images to get to that point at this moment in time, but I think individually it's 1 terabyte. I might be approaching that,
Yeah.
but I think it's great. as a record. An example was we went to the Alps, and because I'd been when I was younger, a lot younger, I was so upset. Sorry.
You're right.
Yeah. When I saw the Mer de Glace, when I've been there in my late teens and early 20s, it's 45 meters below that now,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
level. When we were walking on that crevasse and we were in the Vallée Blanche and we were walking to where we were going climbing, we were jumping across crevasses because we were young and daft and confident in our own athletic abilities back then. The first time you go, you don't do that, but then you get used to it, so you just end up just jumping across them.
yeah.
And we
Right.
were doing that. You've got your crampons on, you've got your ice axes, we are roped together. And but the level that I was walking on now, and obviously that volume of ice, so I've got photographs of it from when we went, when we were younger, and that volume of ice that they've lost will never be there. And I
No.
think so photography's recording from a recording point of view of what the world was and what we're doing to it, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
When these climate deniers say, "Nah, there's no," it's there to see. In Canada, I think they've had funerals for glaciers that have just completely gone. And the Tasman Lake, when I went to New Zealand, I found that out when we were there that it wasn't there 20 years ago. I don't think there was a Tasman Lake.
No.
It was just the glacier.
Yeah, with a bit more than a trickle at times, but basically the startings of a river,
Yeah, but there was no
flowing out the
terminal
bottom.
lake. There was no terminal lake, and like I say, when I went down, like I say, it was very moving for me. And the French have put all year markers on the rock face as you're walking down to
Yeah.
because they've got a tourist bit at the bottom where you can get to it and you can go in. They've got ice caves, and in
Yep.
there they've got furniture, and so that's like at Montenver. And when I went down there, I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really upset me.
Yeah. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
So I think photography from that point of view, really important for, I think it could be used as an instrument for change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Over here at the moment, we've got the Northern Jarrah Forest,
Yep.
one of the big mining giants, South 32. I don't know if I'm getting myself, might have to edit this out. South 32, they're going to destroy it.
Yeah.
That habitat, along with the habitat for the Carnaby's cockatoos, and I think it's the red tail. I'm not really a birder, but I really admire the guys who shoot birds.
Yeah.
They're just, I really admire aircraft.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a lot of
Incredible.
patience, that.
Yeah, some of the images that they get. And there's a guy who he actually prints my work for me,
Okay.
Paul Jarvis.
Okay. Yep.
He's got his own print shop.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're gonna so like with Instagram, the Western Forest Alliance, they're on there and they're encouraging people to appeal because the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, I think they've rubber stamped it for them to go ahead.
Yeah. Wow.
And not only that, there's numbats there as well, which is ironically the state emblem for fauna in
Yeah.
this state. These three species of animals that could lose their habitat because these trees apparently they have to be in a bit of a dip for them to breed in.
Yeah.
The cockatoos, I can't remember exactly what they refer to it as, but they have to be in a little bit of a dip. They've
Mm.
identified there's only so many of these trees that the cockatoos are in.
Yeah.
And I think if you know, like photography in that instance, I think help challenge some of the government organisations really that are in place.
Yeah.
We've got a department for bioconservation and attractions, so the mining company will obliterate the attraction. There's no biodiversity, and where's your conservation?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
Well, I think, and I was talking to Hans Strand recently, and he was talking obviously about some of the conservation work he's been involved in. But that's exactly what you said. You've got to put pressure on the politicians, and the way you do that is you bring public awareness about what's going on to the public, and you basically get them. The problem is that just doing it through social media, I don't think is enough. There's more that can be done, and I'm trying to been involved in a couple of things that I can't talk about at the moment because they may or may not come to fruition. But there's some people out there that I think are trying to use photography in a very positive way to try and get that public awareness as out there as possible so that the pressure on the politicians comes from that public wave of what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, you've got to build the numbers, and then they'll
Yeah,
listen.
that's right. That's right. What do you see as being the future of photography? Where do you see it going?
I hope, obviously, in post we've got artificial intelligence. They're talking about including it now in some of the cameras. Obviously, I watched Will Patino, one of his videos the other week,
Yeah,
and he was talking about why so many photographers get disappointed and give up the hobby because their iPhone takes a better picture.
yeah,
But your iPhones have already got the AI inbuilt, the
yeah, that's
algorithm.
right.
So it's already doing post-processing the minute that you press the shutter.
Yeah,
And yeah, if they're building that into the cameras, I don't know whether artistically, I suppose it could be helpful.
mm.
Certainly managing dynamic range.
Yeah,
I'm not the best at doing that,
yeah. I think dynamic range is probably one area that it would be helpful. The other is autofocus. There's obviously been a lot of advances in autofocus and predictive autofocus as well. I don't know if you saw the announcements for Canon and the 1 and 5 Mark II, but their predictive focus, they actually have modes
Oh
for
wow.
soccer, volleyball, and basketball at the moment. And basically, what'll happen is the AI in the camera will put the focus on the person with the ball, but then when they look like they're going to pass it, it will predictively go to where they see them moving the ball to.
Spot the ball.
Yeah.
Do
And
you
so,
remember that competition?
yeah, I remember
You know,
that.
like we used to do it with the pools, spot the
Yeah.
ball. That's great.
I see advantages in things like that for
Yeah,
sports shooters in particular. I
it's
don't see
incredible.
that helping me a great deal with shooting waves, maybe, but if somebody works out a wave mode that can predict when a wave
Great.
splash is going to happen, yeah, well,
Yeah.
good luck with that.
Yeah, I've seen the Nikon, the new. It's got some of the focus modes that the Z8 and the Z9 have got,
Yeah.
and they're focusing on like bird's eyes for
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing. The technology that they've got, and I think some of that has come into the new Z6.
Yeah.
I've not watched all the videos. I watch Morton Hilmer though.
Yeah.
I always watch him. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'm not really much of a birder, but I like the combination of what he does in extreme conditions as well.
Yeah.
He's a crack shot.
Yeah.
You know, ex-Danish SAS. And yeah, I think I'd feel safe with him in Svalbard.
Yeah, definitely.
If I was going to go to Svalbard, I'd go with Morton. But yeah, he really does put a camera through its paces.
Definitely.
I think some of the conditions that he's put those cameras through, it definitely shows that manufacturers can actually build something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not going to let him down in sub-zero temperatures, for instance.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
he still gets his shots of the muskox.
Yep.
Brilliant.
Who do you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
I think you've got to get Richard Tati on, I think, if he's,
Fair enough.
yeah, Richard. He would be, I did make a list of this. Alex Nail,
Yep.
you know Alex?
I haven't met
I've
him
got
yet, but he's on my list, definitely.
he's a fellow of the Royal Photographic Society.
Yeah.
And I've actually bought two of his books, linen bound, one for the Northwest and then the other one, The Great Wilderness, which is Northwest Scotland. They're both taken in Northwest Scotland throughout the seasons, but his images in the winter of that landscape when it's got snow and at blue hour, they're just phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so Alex is, yeah, he would be a good one. Chris Sale, I mentioned Chris. I think Chris would be a good value. And then Rick Bebbington.
No, can't say.
He's the videographer behind Nigel Danson.
Ah, okay.
When he had a bad back,
Yep.
he couldn't carry anything. It was so bad. And so Rick did all the videoing for him. But he's actually a really good photographer in his own right. And he's just starting, well, I'm not saying starting out, but he's on, like me, I suppose, he's a lot further on than what I am because he's obviously got a YouTube channel, he's got his website, but he still regards himself partway on the journey.
Yeah.
He doesn't know where it's going to take him. And so I think Rick would be a good one. So those guys are like YouTube guys, more like local to W.
Yeah.
Trevor Dobson.
Okay. Yep.
He's just brilliant. His work is, I think he's like for me anyway, the best astrophotographer in WA.
Yeah.
And he's moved on to capturing HA images now, hydrogen,
Okay.
so they get all the red. I actually managed to get some.
Oh,
You know,
wow. Okay.
obviously I've not got any of the filters and my camera's not modified because you have
Yeah.
to buy another camera for that. And maybe I get the Z6 III and get the other one done. Sneak it in. But yeah, when I was post-processing I've not posted the panel yet, but in the northern end of the Milky Way arc, where the Cygnus region is, which in the northern hemisphere they get to see that quite a bit.
Yeah.
It comes up late for us, but there's a lot of hydrogen alpha there, and I was quite surprised that the amount of red that was, to me, it looks red.
Yeah. Right.
I'd have to get someone to confirm. But yeah, Trevor, I would say, is a young photographer over here, Nathan Dobby. He's really good.
Fantastic.
He's got his own little fledgling YouTube channel. I would also say these are some people from overseas that I've met through this genre of photography. Arnaldo Zanoni,
Okay.
I
Yep.
think he heralds from Switzerland, and Ignacio Fernandez from Spain. So they get some, especially Arnaldo. He does a lot in the Alps, so he gets like Larin in New Zealand. He gets
Yeah.
the
Right.
Milky Way over the mountains.
Yep.
For me, that's the ultimate mix. High altitude mountains with that for me would be brilliant.
Nice.
And then Jill Dayton, Tassie Apple Spice.
Yep.
He's prolific.
Yeah. Definitely.
We've got another prolific for over here, Virat Shah,
Okay. Yeah.
and Virat he's just as prolific as Jill.
Yeah.
But yeah, the amount of images that they get is unreal. Something to post pretty much every day,
Yeah.
sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. I can't do that. I've not got enough images.
No, no, I struggle to do it daily.
Yeah. And then there's one more guy who heralds from Wales, Martin Evans, and he's
Okay.
a waterfall photographer,
Yeah.
and he uses that autumn effect.
Yep.
These images are he manages to get the shutter speed perfect, and which is sometimes pretty tricky. I think with you've got to judge the volume of water
Yeah.
together with the shutter speed, and yeah. But when I was earlier on, I can't remember which photographer it was who said it. Limit yourself to a number of photos. So I did. When I got back, I was really disappointed. I thought, I'm not doing that again. Not when I've got a digital camera.
Ah, that's it.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for those.
And then obviously my mate, David Verbosch.
Okay. Yep.
He's from Holland. He's just been on safari shooting
Nice.
wild dogs, and he did send me an image, a couple of images. So it looks like he had quite a successful safari and managed to get some leopards. And another animal, I'm not sure whether it was a mongoose. I'm not that well
Okay.
up on certain wildlife. I know what the wild dogs are like.
Yeah.
I really like them. How they, because they have that kind of the tail, a bit of extra fur on the end of the tail that
Yeah.
bobs around as they're running along. And then I think Murray Wilkie,
Right.
Scotland's Mountains. I love watching his stuff.
Yeah.
And he's primarily, I think he's more of a YouTuber, but he does take superb photographs as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for that. I've got one more question for you, and for many, it's the most important question I asked. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Have you ever asked anyone what's the weirdest kind of pizza they've ever eaten?
No, though, I think Michael Shainbloom mentioned doing peanut butter on pizza.
We went over to watch the tour down under in Adelaide,
Yeah.
and we went to one of the little surrounding towns called Anguston. And I can't remember the name of the establishment, but it's in Angus. It's probably the only pizza guy in Anguston, and
Okay.
Vindaloo pizza.
That's pretty extraordinary. I've had tandoori chicken before, but never vindaloo.
Oh, it was brilliant.
I
It
can
was
imagine.
superb. It was served like with a fresh yogurt, dollops of
Yeah.
yogurt, and it was great.
One
But
I've ever had.
mixed with pineapple. Mixed with pineapple.
Weirdest one I've ever had was an establishment in Goulburn, which will remain nameless, where I think it was we ordered a chicken and barbecue sauce pizza because that's what my wife likes, and we were sharing it, and I took the first couple of bites, and it was like, this actually tastes more like chocolate syrup they use in milkshakes than barbecue sauce. And we ate a bit more, and I'm pretty sure this isn't barbecue sauce, this is chocolate syrup. I think they've obviously had the barbecue sauce in a similar sort of pump jar sort of thing next to the chocolate syrup, and they've got it wrong. Can't say it was great.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much for spending some
Thank
time
you.
with us.
Thanks.
It's been wonderful getting to know you a bit better and learning a lot more about you. Where can people find your work before you get your website up?
Oh yeah, on Instagram I'm just photography, all one word, and that's REID, and Carl with a C.
Yep.
Uh, and I'm also on Flickr with the same on Flickr. So I do go on there because sometimes you can see the resolution, especially I mentioned before Trevor Dobson, his
Yeah.
images, higher resolution are just fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's so much you can learn off these guys because Trevor's quite supportive in the little astro community in Perth.
Mm.
He's always willing to share his knowledge, which is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
on Flickr until I get my website.
fair enough. All right. Well, thank you very much once again. It's been wonderful talking to you, mate.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening, Grant.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast, swinburnephotography.com. I'm also on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.